My book, Happy Campers, 9 Summer Camp Secrets for Raising Kids Who Become Thriving Adults, is not just the story of my own camp, but is the story of many camps all over the world who are promoting the social and emotional growth of kids through intentional strategies. This bonus episode is a recording of one of my Happy Campers interviews with a camp director from one of the day and resident camps who were in my series that was originally aired on Facebook Live and is also available in video form on my website at sunshine-parenting.com. Enjoy this conversation with a camp director who runs an amazing program. Today, I'm chatting with Amy Broadbridge from Camp Deerhorn, and I'm really excited to have her on the series. We recently became friends, but have been following each other's blog posts for several years. And so first, just to start with this whole series, the whole point of this series is just to introduce people to some amazing camp programs that are very intentional about the social and emotional skills and character traits that they work on teaching campers. And really all of the camps that I've been interviewing are true partners with parents in raising kids, raising thriving future adults. Yep. And Camp Deerhorn is one of those amazing programs. So I'm really excited to have Amy on today. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Audrey. It's good to be with you. It's fun to meet you, and it's been great working together so far.
Likewise, I totally agree. I've been learning a lot from what you're writing and all of the things that you're sharing with your families at Deerhorn. So Amy, why don't you talk a little bit about just yourself, your background, what you're interested in, what you studied, and then how you ended up at Camp Deerhorn.
Sure. So I was never a camp person growing up. I was kind of a homebody and really was the kid who got picked up at summer parties because she got what she wanted from home. I did one summer at camp that was not really that great of a fit, and so I didn't go back. I grew up when I was in high school, and my freshman year of college, I taught swimming lessons. Kids have always been I started babysitting from the time I was 11 or 12, and kids have always been like forefront. Whatever I was going to do with the rest of my life was going to definitely center around kids. And so high school and freshman year of college, my summers were spent teaching swimming lessons with my high school swim coach. So every day I was teaching mostly 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And then my freshman year of college, I read this book, and it's called I Will Sing Life. And it's a collection of stories and poems written by kids who went to the Hole in the Wall Gang camp, which was started by Paul Newman, and it's for kids with terminal illnesses or life-changing illnesses. And it was an amazing book. And that was kind of like the spark that said, that would be amazing. Being a camp counselor wasn't on my radar. And so after reading this book, I was like, I'm going to apply to this camp. And so I sent an application, and a few weeks later, I got back this very nice note that said, thank you anyway, but you don't have any experience as a camp counselor, and you don't have any experience with kids with terminal illnesses. And both of those things were true, but that was kind of like what ignited, I would love to do this. I would love to be a camp counselor. So I went to the Career Center. I went to DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana for undergrad. And I went to the Career Center, and they had a huge thick binder of applications from all kinds of summer camps. I didn't know one from the other. I just knew we had vacationed a lot in northern Wisconsin. And so I applied to maybe 3 or 4. A week later, I get a phone call from the guy who hired the staff, Donnie, and he said, we need somebody to be the waterfront director at Camp Deerhorn. Do you want to come do the job? And I said, yeah. And I think it's funny because when I filled out the application, I don't think I knew it was all boys, because I remember putting in the application, I'd love the youngest kids in my cabin, blah, blah, blah. So I went, and I couldn't even tell you what the other 3 camps that I applied to were, because I sounded awesome, and I'm like, let's do this. So my undergrad degree is elementary education. So I graduated, and I was a teacher after college, and that was what my degree was in. And so I could come back every summer. I loved camp so much. My first summer was the summer after my sophomore year of college. And then the next 3 years, I just like that kind of shaped like, yes, I want to be a teacher because I need to come back every summer to work at camp. So I did. For 6 summers, I was head of the waterfront, and I one summer also got to lead the Voyageur and Pioneer program, which is my husband's in charge of those. It's 5 weeks that they're there with us, leadership programs, and the Voyageur program does 5 weeks, but then also does an 8-day sea kayaking trip in the Apostle Islands, Lake Superior. And then the Pioneer program is our answer to the fact that Voyageur was always full and we hated turning kids away. And so my husband has developed this amazing Pioneer program that involves a week of backpacking the North Country Trail along Lake Superior. But both of them are there for 5 weeks. So I got for 3 summers, I got to lead the Voyageur program, which was incredible. At that time, it was half hiking and half sea kayaking. So that was six summers. And it's funny in terms of even how I got my first teaching job. My first year after college, I just substitute taught. I was not ready to be a full-time teacher. I felt like I needed more experience. So I lived at home and I substitute taught, went back to camp. Still, I had applied to a ton of jobs for that fall, hadn't gotten anything back. So I was working in the office that summer in, that would have been 2000. And I was working in the office and I get this phone call from a friend of mine whose mom was a teacher at a Catholic school in Chicago. And she said, Amy, she's like, can you just have Rock call me because we just lost our 4th grade teacher. And I'm wondering if he could see if there's anybody there who's looking for a job. And I was like, hi, I'm looking for a job. And so that year, like I went down, I stopped in Chicago and had the interview and got the job. And so spent 3 years teaching 4th grade at a Catholic school in Chicago, which was an amazing experience on the north side in Wilmette, called St. Joseph. And that allowed me to then be able to go back to camp every summer. And then the 3rd year that I was teaching, I had led Voyageur for 1 summer. And then the 2nd summer that I led Voyageur, just the way the staffing worked out, Patrick, my husband, and I ended up leading Voyageur together. And everybody likes to joke that they saw it coming long before we did, including my nieces, like, oh yeah, we knew you were going to marry him. Well, neither one of us knew that until it actually happened. But we've been friends for 6 summers. We knew each other. We had, had significant others. And so that was 2002. And we got married in 2003 at camp, of course, which was incredible. So I used to say, I would write essays or whatever and talk about there's going to be a day when I don't get to come back to camp and I'm going to be really sad. And then it just didn't. There's not a day when I get to do it year round. And I always joke with my husband. I said, when you asked me to marry you, I had to stop. And I had to make sure that I was marrying you for you and not just for camp, because that's how much I loved camp. And of course, I was marrying him for him. But it was a wonderful wedding, and we got married. And so those first 6 summers, I worked as head of the waterfront. And then starting in 2003, I took on more of a director role. So camp, he has 2 older brothers. I'm married to Patrick, and then he has an older brother named Blaine, and his oldest brother is Don. Their grandparents started Deerhorn in 1930, and then passed it along to their dad, and then in 94 passed it along to the 3 boys. 2013, Don and his wife Susan retired from day-to-day directorship, but they're still owners and very, very, very crucial to running of camp, just not of day-to-day stuff. And then his middle brother, Blaine, they have 2 daughters. They have his wife, Barbara, and Patrick and I, so are the 4 main directors. And then their kids, Taylor and Kiana, are in their 20s, and so are now coming on and taking more roles on as well. So we're 3rd generation family ownership, whereas like the 4th generation, we kind of have a split because Blaine and Barb's kids are older in their mid-20s, and our kids are 10 and 12. So it'll be a while before that half of the 4th generation takes over. So that's kind of my story, how I get into camp, and I feel incredibly lucky. I used to go to those video presentations in Chicago when I taught at St. Joseph's, and I'd go to the presentations and I'd talk about how awesome camp was and how much I loved it. And And so I joke now at video presentations, I'm like, I'm not quite I don't sound as unbiased as I used to be, since my last name is now Broadbridge, but the passion is still there in terms of how much I love camp and the friendships formed and what we do on a daily basis.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great story, Amy. And you know what? It's so funny as you're talking, it sounds just like my story. The whole binders in the career center.
Yep.
Was how I found camp, which is so, that's so 1980s. I don't know what year it was. And I actually started at my camp the summer after my sophomore year, just like you.
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading some of your bio, and it was crazy in terms of some of the similarities. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that is so great. And I also think there's so much of educators who are in camp. A lot of time, a lot of camps were started by educators who just spent their summers running the camp programs. And I think it really brings to light how camps are really an important part of education for kids.
For sure.
And it's the whole social emotional part, and some of what we're now finding, maybe even the more important things than the academics that we're teaching at our camps.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Camp Deerhorn. And actually, I want to ask you, are your kids boys or girls, or what?
One of each. So we have a 12-year-old boy and a 10-year-old daughter.
Okay. So Camp Deerhorn, like you said, is for boys. So why don't you talk about what age boys come to Camp Deerhorn, and also where exactly you are and your sessions, and just kind of general information for people who aren't familiar at all with your program.
Sure. So like I said, Camp Deerhorn was started in 1930 by my husband's grandparents, Dr. Don and Skeeter. Dr. Don Broadbridge. And then he was a dentist in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and he closed his practice every summer, and he would come run camp. He started it in the Great Depression, and a lot of times the counselors were owed IOUs at the end of the summer because there were more counselors than there were kids. And we just admire the ability to start a camp during the Great Depression. So we feel so lucky because we didn't have to start it. I mean, we were blessed to carry on the legacy. And then Patrick's parents, Don and Skeeter, they were just incredible. And so we serve boys ages 7 to 16. We actually, they can be 6 to come to father-son camp. So we start our summer with 2 4-day father-son camps. And they can be 6 all the way up to there's no upper range. We have uncles, we have grandparents, we have guys in their 30s who come with their dad. So 2 father-son camps that are 4 days long. And then we have a 10-day session, a 2-week session, 3-week session, 10-day session, and then 2 more 4-day father-son camps. And we used to be like a lot of camps out there where you had half summer or full summer, or you had, 3-week sessions. And we found that parents were getting frustrated because summers are getting shorter, kids are getting more overcommitted, and parents want to do family vacations. And so we kind of split some of our sessions into smaller, and we miss the continuity for sure a little bit, but in terms of the number of kids that we get to serve, and a lot of those kids wouldn't come if it was only a 4-week session in terms of finances or in terms of just family schedule. So in terms of our activities are pretty broad summer camp activities. Waterfront has everything: water skiing, sailing, swimming, canoeing, kayaking. On land, we have mountain biking and arts and crafts, horseback riding, golf, sports and games. It used to be called baseball, soccer, and now we've changed it a long time ago to sports and games, so they played something different every day. Archery, riflery, pretty typical summer camp activities for the course of the summer. So, and then the other thing too, you're talking about kind of where we came from. We have our Deerhorn Creed, which we'll talk about later. But then there's this mission statement that Dr. Don wrote in 1932, and he wrote it, almost 90 years ago. And it's amazing because it says here, I'll just read a quick, it says, "This summer, your boy will grow. This is the keynote of our responsibility at Camp Deerhorn. We have planned and built for his fun today and his development tomorrow. We like to think that Camp Deerhorn carries to your boy something richer and more permanent than suntan, stronger muscles, clear eyes, inches, and pounds. We believe he will take back with him and possess through the years the prizes of character, courage, self-reliance, self-discipline, the capacity for friendship and consideration. In brief, those ideals of manhood which every parent seeks to realize in his boy." And here we are, almost 90 years later, and like those could not be more true. And so it's pretty incredible, and it's such a gift to be able to carry on that legacy.
Oh, that is awesome that you have those words, because they are so true still today. Okay. So Amy, you said it quickly. So just the main session links then, so like 10 days or 2 weeks?
So we have 2 4-day father-son sessions that start. We call them Father-Son 1, Father-Son 2. And then we have our 4 sessions are called A, B, C, and D. A is 10 days, B is 2 weeks, C is 3 weeks, D is 10 days, and then 2 more father-son sessions. We do in the middle of the 1 week session, in the middle of the 3 week session, when our Voyageurs, our 15-year-olds are out on their trip, we bring in 12 7 to 10-year-olds who are coming for the first time. And so we call the Spike Buck session. It's the 1 week. It's just 1 week of, and so it's very much just a taste. It's not, you know how it is at summer camp, like you really got to stay for a while to really get the full feel. But for them, it's a great taste to see if it's something, and almost all of them come back the following year for longer. So we do have that 1 week session. And that's the only one that's for a certain age group. And you can obviously do it twice. So all the other sessions have 7 to 16-year-olds. It's just that 1 week session that is for the little guys. So, and I don't know if I mentioned, we are located in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, which is about 5.5 hours north of Chicago. And we're on a lake. We are on 4th lake of the Moan Lake chain. There are 5 lakes in the chain. So we're on 4th lake. It's not a very romantic name, but that's where we're located, is on 4th lake, just outside, about 7 miles outside of Rhinelander.
And how big of a lake is it?
It's about a mile across to the other side. Camp Deerhorn, we own about 100 acres of woods and a substantial amount of waterfront. And so the lake is, it's big, but it's not so big that you have tons of, jet skis. And like, it's most people who have summer houses on the lake. It's very quiet and calm. And so it's not our own lake, but most days it feels like it, except for 4th of July, then there definitely are a few out having fun, but mostly it's a pretty quiet lake, and great for skiing, sailing, and all the waterfront activities.
So great. It seems like what a great opportunity for families who are thinking about Camp Deerhorn, that you have 2 different, like they could come with their dad the first time.
That's been a huge really program. Yep. Huge feeder program. In fact, our Father-Son 1 and then Father-Son 2, Father-Son 2 is reserved only for kids who are coming staying for the A session. And that A session, oftentimes, like last year, A session filled up before Father-Son 2 did, but we just saved that session for kids who are staying, or their siblings who are too young to stay or aren't ready to stay. But that's been great, like to have, these 45 spots of just if you're staying for A session. And it doesn't always happen the first year. They come when they're 6 or they're 7, and they might not be ready until they're 8 or 9, but they do. They feel super comfortable being at camp and knowing their way around. And then a lot of them are ready to come the next summer by themselves.
Oh, that's so great. And you also have that 1 week opportunity for first-time campers.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing a lot of your first-time campers just come to one of the regular sessions, correct? For like 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Most of them. Yeah. I mean, because we offer 2 10-day sessions, like that's a great start for first-year kids too. The 1 week just tends to be a little more hand-holding, and just slightly shorter for some parents. Like the 1 week is a huge difference than 3 extra days for the 10-day session. So.
How many kids do you have at one time, and how big are the groups, or how are they, split up into groups?
Sure. So we have 140 at a time, and that's a really great size for our dining hall, especially when you have all boys. So 140 is our max for each of the sessions. And we divide them by age for the activity groups. So the way our activities are set up, they're not getting choice in terms of what activities they pick. The only choice they get is whether they do horseback riding or golf, because horseback riding is a pay extra activity. And so they have a schedule. They're in with activity group with kids their own age. Some of them will be from their cabin and some will be from other cabins. So we have 12 activity groups. And so our schedule goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 activity periods, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, the other 6. The only thing they have every day is sports and games, because we take 2 groups and put them together so they can play team sports. And so that's kind of like our basis. The activity groups have about 12 kids. But then the cool thing too about Deerhorn is, and I think this is probably true of a lot of summer camps, is all the different ways we group them. So you're not just getting to know kids who are your own age. You know, if you're in second grade in elementary school, you are playing with second graders on the playground, but at camp, age just like melts away. And so they're put in an activity group, and then they also have groups from their kuji, what's what we call cabins or kujis. The littlest kids will have four kids, and then a counselor who has to be at least 19 or have a year of college, and then an assistant counselor who can be 16, 17, or 18. So the little kids all have an assistant counselor also, but only like 4 or 5 kids in a cabin. And then as you get older, I think our biggest cabin might hold 10 kids, and that might just have one counselor for the older kids who don't need as much help as the younger ones do. So you get to know kids in your cabin, you get to know kids in your activity group, and then you also are put a table assigned to one of the 15 tables for a whole week, and that's a whole mix of different age groups of kids. And so you get to know all those kids. And then you also are chosen to put on a team. We have 4 camp teams, the Apache, Chippewa, Iroquois, and Navajo. And every year we pick 4 16-year-olds who have been exemplary leaders around camp, and they are chosen to come lead the 4 camp teams for the summer. And they are just the cream of the crop, the best kids you could ever hope to work with. And so those 4 kids stay for the whole summer. They lead the 4 camp teams. They do a draft. Obviously not like nobody knows what order anybody was drafted in, but so kids within a day or 2 of being at camp are put on a team of all different age levels. And so that's one of the coolest things when you hear kids talking about friendships at camp, is like a 10-year-old talking about like one of the leaders is his best friend, or like a staff member talking about this 9-year-old kid who's become his best friend. And I just think that's one of the coolest things about camp, is how the age doesn't matter, and everything that we can learn from younger kids and that younger kids can learn from the older kids. And, you know, you see them out on the basketball court playing a game of knockout, and it's like the height levels, all ages, including counselors playing the game together. And I think that's a really important benefit of a summer at camp.
Yeah. I think we've done our kids a disservice in schools, segregating them so much. Yeah. When junior high, especially, like they're only around other junior high kids, when they could benefit so much from role modeling for younger kids and learning from older kids. So I think that is one of the beautiful things about camp is just that ability to mentor and to feel responsible for younger kids and to look up to older kids. And sometimes parents worry about their kids being around older kids, but in a camp setting like yours, it's only good things that come out of that, because they're getting these great role models of, you know, people who you want your child to be more
and
like.
It holds those older kids to really high standards, because if we have behavior issues, which is not very often, but if we do, you know, we talk about how you're 14, you're 15, there are so many kids looking up to you, and you don't have to be one of the 4 leaders to be a leader at Camp Deerhorn. And so it really, I think, holds them accountable for what they say and how they act, and they learn how to treat others with kindness and compassion. And because it's different, you know, a lot of times one of the best things we do, I think, for homesickness is when you have a kid who is homesick, and it varies, right? It varies in terms of whether they manifest as a stomach ache or belligerence or just crying all the time, refusing to go to activities. And so it depends on the age of the kid. But a lot of the younger ones, we oftentimes we hand them off. We're like one of the leaders, one of the 16-year-olds who was homesick himself when he was younger, and so he can talk about it. Our counselors, even some of the 13, 14-year-olds who struggle with homesickness, and they're going to listen to them way more than they're going to listen to the principal, right? To the director who's like, you got to stay busy and blah, blah, blah. But if there's this kid who's active, who's a leader, who's just awesome, and they really look up to you, and well, if he can do it, you know, I can do it too. So it really comes in handy in terms of homesick kids, being able to really help them and help them see how good camp can be.
It sounds like just a really nice community for the boys, and especially the size that they get to know each other and everything else. Do you have a lot of your campers? Are they, you know, kids who are coming back, or maybe their dads went? And how about your staff? Do you have a lot of that kind of continuity?
We do, big time. We have each summer, I would say probably between 65-70% of our kids are returning from the year before. And that's not counting, the kids who age out who are too old and now are working on staff. Last summer, we have about 100 staff over the course of the summer. Our staff ratio is about 1 to 4. But during the course of the summer, we have about 100 100 staff. And last year, I think I could count on one hand the number who had not either been a camper or a counselor before. We always hire a few through Camp America, and that's great to get guys from, England and other countries. And then we have a few sometimes who come friends of a friend. And so not all of our staff were campers, but it's their second or third or fourth year working at camp. So there's definitely that continuity there for sure, which is huge because they've grown up learning about the creed and what life is like at camp. And so it's a beautiful thing to watch.
So what's it like? Like, I think for new families, it might feel a little daunting going to a camp that's been around for so long and has so many returning families. Tell me how you welcome in new families and first year campers to help assimilate them into the community.
Yeah. So we try to do some presentations, especially in Chicago. About 65% of our kids come from Chicago. And so we try to hold presentations, not just for people who are interested in learning about camp, but also just a Q&A to meet a camp director and meet other camp kids. I facilitate a lot of connections. Oftentimes I'll have a mom email me and say, like, my son's really nervous. Like, he's older, he's 13, and he doesn't know if all the kids are going to be younger. And so a lot of times, they'll say, like, can you help suggest Coogee requests? Like, he's not coming with any friends. Can you suggest? So I love going into that session and looking to see the 13-year-olds who are there. And I've done this a few times where I send her a message back. These are the names, not that you will know any of them, but they're awesome kids. And I think they would be great Coogee requests. And then sometimes those kids, if they live in the same area, will even meet up with their parents' help so that they know some people before. We do have a bus that comes up from Chicago that on the first day and the last day, and that tends to be where camp starts. So even kids who are coming to camp for the first time, obviously sometimes parents want to bring their child up, which we understand completely, which is awesome. We love, meeting parents. But other kids are like, no, I really want to ride the bus, et cetera. And so that's kind of by the time they've been on a 6-hour bus ride up to Deerhorn, they get there and camp has already begun and they already know a bunch of people. And there are parents, who worry that their kids don't know anybody or they won't send them if they don't know anybody. But then there are also others who are like, no, this is why I sent him to camp, right? To meet new friends and he's excited. And so it kind of varies depending on the parents reaching out to us and saying, here are things. And I think another thing we do to help new kids is on that opening day, the bus arrives around 3 p.m. And from then on, everything we do is in small sections. So it's not like here's camp and go, and here's all the things you need to know in the first 24 hours. Whereas it's more okay, now all you have to do is go look at the list, find a cabin, and then we'll be all down in Coogee Row, helping everybody get settled. And then the next step after you unpack is to go take your swim test. And then when you're done with that, then you go back to your Coogee and, they do tours around camp or whatever. Then we have a short meeting at 4:30 or 5 to introduce the staff. And at that meeting, my brother-in-law, Blaine, he will only do the schedule that goes up until dinner time. And so this is what, and then at dinner time, it's okay, this is the schedule for the rest of the night. And then up until breakfast tomorrow. And then at breakfast, we talk about, so we try not to overwhelm kids with everything all at once. And I think that works really well. But I think one of the main things is just if parents have concerns, whether or not their child is coming with a friend, that they reach out to us and that we can provide names of who's coming from their area, or we can make suggestions for cabin requests, or if they want to meet somebody ahead of time. There are lots of our camp parents for sure who are like, yes, I would love to do that. My son would love to do that. So
if parents want to talk to someone about, like, if Camp Deerhorn's a good match for their son, are
Sure.
you the person that they usually talk to, or is it any of you as the directors?
Any of us. So we have an 800 number that's on our website. And the 800 number right now rings in Florida, which is where Blaine and Barbara live. And so that's who they would talk to if they called the 800 number. But frequently, my husband does all the applications. And so he's the one acknowledging all the applications, and he's the one sending out, info about filling out forms. So frequently people will just reply and then ask questions. And so we don't have the 800 number, but our phone rings here too. And most of our emails are pretty easy. The Blaine and Barbara's is just Deerhorn at deerhorn.com, and mine is Amy at deerhorn.com, and Patrick's is Patrick at deerhorn.com. So it's pretty easy to reach out to any of us. Like I said, they have the main email and the main phone number, but Patrick and I do so much by email as well that it pretty much depends on kind of what started the conversation. Yeah.
That's so nice. And then all of you are at camp during the summer too. So you've already kind of gotten to know the families ahead of time. And then once the boys are there.
Yeah, we're there from, end of April and middle of May. Since our kids are still in school, Patrick and I are taking turns going up for a week and then staying down here with the kids. We live in Madison, and so it's about 4 hours south of camp. So we're all up there all summer from June, July, and August for sure.
That's so great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, first of all, I want you to share a little bit about your philosophy around having an all-boys program. And then let's get back to that original mission of DOC and what the character traits are that you're really intentional now about instilling in the boys at camp. So why don't you just cover those two things? Because I think the concept might be new to some families of all boys camp. And then also let's just talk about the amazing kind of transformational things that happen to the kids who come there.
Sure. So I think we are all boys camps because that's where we started. That's one of the main things that we have stuck with is the feeling of importance of just boys. Like I don't know how co-ed camps are run in terms of everything that goes along with boys and girls. And our camp was started. So Dr. Don, his sister had a camp down the road called Rhinelander, a girls' camp that was started several years before, and he worked there. And so he wanted to start a boys' camp, a brother camp to Rhinelander. Rhinelander closed in 1974. So we've never even toyed with the idea of co-ed or just girls because we feel like it's a good thing to just be just boys. And they both have their own challenges in terms of how you deal with interpersonal relationships and all of that. And I don't think any of us feel like we wanted to mix both together and figure that. We have our father-son camp. We tried for a couple of years to do a family camp, which we didn't have a ton of space because we had to have one family in each cabin. And so that's only 20 families or so, 21 that we could take. And it was kind of like back in 2008 and like the recession, and it just didn't take off. And what we had these waiting lists for were father-son camps. And so there were a lot of little girls who, after those couple of years, were really mad at us for not having family camp anymore. But, some come back and they work at camp when they are older. So I think we stick with boys because boys is what we know. And I think there are hard parts and easier parts depending, each gender. And so we stick with what we know, and we like the whole idea. There are a lot of kids who come who have just sisters, or, they talk about like what a gift it is for their son to be able to be the boy, the camaraderie and like the boy atmosphere. And our creed was written by Dr. Don in 1930 also. And it's crazy how, almost 90 years later, how relevant it is for today's kids, and how important it is. Like one of my favorite lines of the creed says, to be kind because manliness requires kindness. And we have parents who talk about their kids coming home saying what it means to be a booster rather than a knocker, and all of this stuff. And we had a story from a few years ago. The leaders do a water campfire speech at the end of the summer, kind of summing up all their years as a camper. It's one of those like very solemn, very traditional, quiet activities. And we have a lot of younger kids at that session at the end. And so you always think like they're falling asleep, they're not listening to the speeches. Somebody introduces them, and then the leader gives a speech, and then they play a song on guitar. And one of them was talking about what it means to be a regular fellow. So it says to be a booster rather than a knocker, an optimist rather than a pessimist, and a regular fellow is what kind of that whole line starts. And so he talked all about what it means to be a regular fellow, that there's nothing regular about being a regular fellow. And we had this letter that came home after camp from a 13-year-old who was his first year at camp. And he went home, and his grandfather was nearing death, and he sat down next to him, and he told him all about what it means to be a regular fellow and everything he had learned at Deerhorn, and that when he had kids when he was grown up, that he would tell them all about his grandfather, the regular fellow, and like that, how much that, I mean, I was in tears just reading it. And his mom says, like, here are all these adults who are in the room, and here's our 13-year-old, like, showing us how to be and what to talk about. And like, it's those times that I realize that they are listening, even if you think like, the younger ones are nodding off, they do hear it. And so the creed has always been around, but I think it's been a lot of the last 10 to 15 years that we have intentionally made it a part of the daily talk at camp. Respect for all ages, and talk about the friendship, and like I said before, about all the different ways that they can be grouped. I know that a lot of camps do, like I read someplace, I think it was maybe in your book, about some camps do things like the roses, thorns, and leaves. Ours are called orchids, onions, and warm fuzzies. And it started, like they do it on Voyager and Pioneer. And the orchid is the great thing, and the onion is the tough thing, and then the warm fuzzy is thanking someone for something that they did. And so it's really cool because my husband's been leading this trip for over 20 years, and now a lot of those kids are, as they come back and be counselors, they're doing it with the younger kids in their cabin, and so every night they're doing these warm, orchids, onions, and warm fuzzies to really reach out and connect each other. Another cool thing is my brother-in-law, Blaine, does a lot of the talking at the beginning of the sessions and at meals about rules and here's what we need to do, the schedule and all of that. But one of the very first meeting when we introduced the staff, one of the stories that he tells is called how to be a turtle flipper. There's a video on YouTube about these two turtles, and one turtle is on its back. It's a real video of these two turtles. And one turtle's on its back, and this other turtle slowly, of course, walks along and shoves its nose under the turtle shell and keeps nudging and flips it over, and then they just go off walking together. And so we've gotten letters, from kids about how awesome camp was, and that for the rest of my life I will be a turtle flipper. And that's how we need to treat each other. That's what we need to do to each other is flip each other, is be there when the other needs help. So that's always a really cool thing that kids really, they hear it, they listen to it. Every Sunday we have what we call Words of Wisdom, where it's non-denominational. It's just a very short talk that one of our counselors gives about something that is meaningful in their life. And that has been, there are a lot of kids who will remember a lot of the topics that counselors have talked about. And again, they're going to listen to those kids before they're going to listen to us as camp directors. I think, and so kindness and compassion, and, that all goes along with our creed. And, the blog I wrote the other day about the comfort zone, we talk about on Voyager and Pioneer that the comfort zone is in the middle, and then the stretch zone and the panic zone. And Patrick talks about that a lot. The Voyagers and Pioneers like to talk about the Patrick zone, and they, joke, but kind of our point of camp or of the trips is growing the stretch zone. You have the comfort zone. Here's where you're comfortable. You can't learn in the panic zone. You're freaking out. So the stretch zone is a sweet spot, and what you just want to make that stretch zone bigger. So where you're working on decreasing the panic zone and increasing then the comfort zone. That if the stretch zone goes out, then in the middle, the comfort zone gets bigger. And so, you talk about in your book about grit, and I think that's one of those very important things grown at summer camp. One thing we like to focus on at camp is on improvement instead of on awards for who's the best in each activity. So at the end of each session, the main awards that are given out are most improved in archery, most improved for juniors who are 7 to 10, intermediates are 11 and 12, and then teenagers or seniors are 13 and up. So each of those divisions gets the most improved in every activity. And that's the patch, that's the award that's given. It's like, you stand up if you wakeboarded, skied, or slalom for the first time while you were at Deerhorn. It's here's the most improved patches. It's, that what we focus on is improving in those lifetime sports, not on being the best. It's been a really long time since we did intercamp competitions because we found that it was not the kind of environment that we wanted to partake in because we don't have an ultimate Frisbee team. We just play it on Sunday mornings for fun. And kids get enough of the competition in their real lives. And so the focus is, on the improvement. And the effort is what's applauded. It doesn't matter how many times it took you to get up on water skis, like you got up, and that was the big thing. And that's why I think one reason we don't give kids a ton of choice, that these are the schedule, these are activities, because kids come to camp and they're like, well, I don't like sailing. And you say, well, have you ever sailed before? And they're like, no. Like, okay, well, then we're going to try it. And maybe they still won't like sailing, but it's kind of incredible how they grow when kind of like gently, nudged into taking these safe risks. They learn how to take the safe risks that are in a safe place with people encouraging them. And they learn the difference between horrible risks or, not safe risks and whether it's, trying new foods or whether it's meeting new people or learning how to get up water skis. The safe risk, it's an environment where it's the effort that's applauded and not that they're the best skier at camp or whatever.
Oh, I just love when you were talking about the boy and his grandfather. I got
teary
hearing that. But I think that when you're talking about boys and what boys need right now is they really need places like Camp Deerhorn where they can have modeling from other boys about just being kind and respectful. I love in fact, you're going to have to send me that turtle flipping
I'll find
video.
it. Yeah, I don't have the exact link, but I can find it.
I'll put it in the comments because I just love that metaphor and that they are really taking in those ideas and that like, I am this regular guy. I'm going to do this stuff. I'm going to be a turtle flipper in a world that is not promoting that. And so that's just beautiful what you're doing. So what do you hear from your families? I'm sure you have many kids who come back and grow up and you hear either from the kids themselves about the impact of Camp Deerhorn or from the parents. What are some of the things you hear about the positive impact of their experience with you?
So it's amazing to get these letters from kids. Like the parents' comments are wonderful, but when it's a 10-year-old kid talking about being a booster rather than knocker or being a turtle flipper, that's pretty special. Here's just an example. You talked about earlier on about parents seeing us kind of as partners in helping their kids grow. So she says, this is from a mom whose boys one's now grad school and the other one is in college. And she said, I've just returned from dropping off my son at college. He's excited, confident, and well prepared. Your families and the camp experiences have been so important in the development of my sons. Thinking of you as partners in raising these guys. Hard to believe they were about 8 and 10 when they started at Deerhorn. Many of the skills and values learned as campers and counselors have come to light as they both begin a new chapter. So, it doesn't matter how old they are, like it's pretty incredible. And I'm doing a blog here pretty soon about camp as the ultimate internship. Like that was one of the great sessions, right, at Camp Rhinelander Camp, and how we as camp directors don't do a great job at saying like, it's not just fun to work at camp, like these are important skills that you're learning. And it's cool because I reached out to a whole bunch of former staff on Facebook and I got so much feedback like, oh my gosh, like so many things that I learned at camp who either helped me get the job, helped me keep the job. Like if you can manage, 4 8-year-olds at 9 o'clock at night when they're trying to go to bed, you can definitely manage an entire, production team, whatever. So that's pretty awesome to hear. The other thing that has been super meaningful for us over the past year, especially the year or two, is that it is not really an easy thing to talk about. We have attended several funerals of members of the Deerhorn family. And in the last year, we lost a 12-year-old camper and also one of our best staff members. The staff member was the spring of 2018. He was supposed to work the entire summer at camp. And so when we went to the funeral, and the mass number of people who showed up. And the Voyageurs, he helped lead Voyager the year before, and the Voyageurs showed up the night before. They all spent the night in one basement together, like they hung out together. And, one of the kids talking about it. Well, I feel guilty that I'm excited to see my friends. And I said, no, like, you have to hold on to the good stuff in the midst of all of, that you can't protect kids from the bad. And that for a lot of these kids, even staff, like guys who I'm really good friends with, who are in their mid-20s, who have all 4 grandparents, who have never lost anybody close to them, like that was incredibly hard for them. And so one thing that has come to be important to my heart is the importance of connection. They say that it takes a village to raise a child, and most of our kids have incredible villages already, right? They're coming from great homes. They have great friends, very well-connected, supportive families. But I feel like you can never make your child's village too big. We can't promise, we can't protect them from all of the hard stuff in life, the pain and sadness, but we can promise them that they will never deal with it alone, ever. And so that was seeing all the Deerhorn people who showed up to support the family, to support each other. So I had, during those 2 weeks after he passed away, like I kind of was the liaison, the middle in terms of connecting people with like what was happening with the service and all of that. And I had an email from a parent, and she said, I appreciate you all more and more. As parents, we are struggling to help our son as he deals with this tragedy. It comforts and helps us that he values the Deerhorn Creed about what it means to be manly. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to care about others. It's okay to cry. And no one would wish any of those things to have happened to us, but it has brought us closer as a community. And I think it has shown the parents the deeper connections that are formed, that it's not just a summer camp. We can say friendships for a lifetime, and I can talk about, but gosh, like weddings and babies and like really like for a lifetime. And now, in recent years, we've had to do funerals too. And a community that's that big, we feel lucky that we don't have to do it more often. We feel very, very lucky. And so that I think has been huge in terms of parents understanding, like it goes so much deeper than just 2 weeks or whatever. And I'm sure you've seen like Gold Arrow too, like the last day of camp, the pictures that I take on the last day of camp as the buses are leaving, and like everybody's crying, and like it just it shows boys that it's okay. It's okay to show emotions and to be vulnerable and to be empathetic and compassionate, and like that's what it means to be manly. Manliness requires kindness, and like the hugs and the tears, and like it's sad, but it's also like it hits you hard about what camp means to everybody.
Sure. It's so much more than their time at camp.
Yeah.
It's that ongoing, what they've learned there and what they're taking out into the world. I always say it's just like the camp changes the world, because if you can change kids and how they treat each other, they go out and then they are these positive, warm, compassionate leaders. And boys especially need help accessing those feelings. They, they've been taught by culture that, anger is acceptable.
Right.
But all the other feelings are not. And so to be in a place where they can learn that sadness and disappointment and all these other feelings are okay, and let's talk about them, that is so powerful. Amy, I just want to clarify, because you mentioned that also a camper, a 12-year-old, that was not at camp.
That was not at camp. Thank you for clarifying. That was
but again, because our communities are so close, you had a very instrumental role in helping people work through all the things that are going on. And this is where the partnering comes in. And I see that you are that for your families. So when families become part of the Camp Deerhorn family, it's not just a summer thing. It goes on. Hopefully the kids come back and become counselors. And
as a camp director, it was so like going to the funeral for this 12-year-old boy. Yes, it happened last fall. And watching the staff who showed up, who knew this boy from 10 days or 2 weeks that he was at camp. And here are these 20-something, 16, 17, 18, 20-year-old guys who needed to come support the family, even though they didn't even know the family. They knew him, and they knew his brother, who also comes to camp. And so I stood there at that funeral just like overwhelmed with pride that we had, these boys who had been campers for so long and now have been camper counselors for a while. And like, they felt it necessary to come be, because, it's really hard to enter into somebody else's suffering. It's easy to send a card. It's easy to say, hey, how are you? And expect the answer, fine. But it's scary and it's vulnerable to put yourself into that situation and enter into somebody else's pain. And I was so proud of them, and so proud of what we're doing and watching those boys grow into these incredible, caring young men.
Yeah. And you often don't see that until the challenging times. So even though we don't want to have challenging times, we know that our kids are inevitably going to face them.
Yeah.
And so giving them some tools and the ability to get together and be in community with others who can support them is so powerful, what you're doing. So it's really quite amazing. Amy, is there anything else that we haven't touched on? Oh, actually, one thing I wanted to clarify. When you talk about the Voyageurs and what's the other group?
Pioneers.
The Pioneers. Okay. How old are those kids? And those are a 5-week program, right?
Yes. So we have, our sessions are A, B, C, and D. B session is 2 weeks and C session is 3 weeks. So Voyageurs and Pioneers have to come for the full 5-week BC session. And they're doing the leadership training beforehand. They're doing the Leave No Trace ethics. They're doing wilderness cooking. They're doing first aid. They're doing all of that stuff. If they're doing the kayaking section, then they're out in the kayaks on our lake, practicing safety skills. And so they have to be there for 5 weeks. And then the Pioneer program culminates in a 7-day trip backpacking along Lake Superior, North Country Trail, or a different section of the North Country Trail, I should say. And then the Voyager program is the 8 day of sea kayaking in the Apostle Islands. So yeah, it's its own program, but they're still BC campers for that session. And they're 15. That's for 15-year-olds.
Okay, all 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
For the 5. Okay, for both the Pioneers and Voyagers.
All 15-year-olds are eligible. So we do Voyager by years that they have been a camper. And so when they sign up, if you've been a camper for 8 years, then you will have first choice whether you want to do Voyager or Pioneer. And so Voyager, we cap at 16 in terms of safety numbers. Pioneer, we also cap at 16 for the same reason. Sometimes if there are still a few, it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of a ton of kids apply 1 year, but then the next year we don't have quite as many 15-year-olds. And so if there are a couple spots left in Pioneer, for example, then we would invite 14-year-olds who have more years at camp if they want to do it, so that we have the 16 for that trip as well. So not all 15-year-olds choose to do those programs. Most do. It's kind of like a rite of passage, but not all do. We have some 15-year-olds who have always been 10-day A session campers or 10-day D session campers, and they don't want to come for longer for whatever reason, and that's fine too. But most of our 15-year-olds do the Voyager or Pioneer.
So for new kids coming at 15, they would do one of your regular sessions.
Yeah, they would just come to any of the 4 sessions if they're 15 years old. And like their parents are understandably worried about that. They come and 15 is older. And but we've had several 15-year-olds over the years that have just hit the ground running, and like everybody, their only regret is that they didn't find camp sooner, of course. And so yes, they can just, and really if they're 15 and it's their first summer at camp and we have space in Pioneer and they want to do it, they technically could. It doesn't happen very often because if they're coming for the first time, they want camp rather than even knowing what those programs are about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for clarifying that. I'll put a link to your website so that all this information people can look up, and also a link to, we'll put your 800 number also in the comments so that people can call if they have any questions. And this has been just so terrific learning more about your program. I had talked to you a lot, but I didn't know as much about Camp Deerhorn, and it just sounds fabulous and so much fun. And I hope you have some new families that contact you to find out more after listening to this. So thank you so much for your time today with me and for the wonderful work you're doing at Camp Deerhorn.
Thanks, Audrey. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for joining me for this Happy Campers interview bonus podcast episode. If you're interested in learning more about how you can bring home some of the magic of summer camp, I'd love for you to pick up a copy of my book, Happy Campers, 9 Summer Camp Secrets for Raising Kids Who Become Thriving Adults. It's available for pre-order now and comes out on May 7th. And you can find more information about it on my website by going to happycampersbook.com. To thank you for pre-ordering the book, I have a couple of fun freebies. The first of which is the first chapter, Camp Secret Number 1, Connection Comes First. I'll also send you an invitation to join my private Facebook group that's called the Happy Campers Book Club, where we'll be sharing resources, videos, and conversation about raising kids who become thriving adults. To access these freebies, simply pre-order your copy of the book and then fill out the form at happycampersbook.com. Together, we can spread the happiness of summer camp to the whole world.